Welcome to Caldwell County Today. I'm Paige Counts, Public Information Officer for Caldwell County. Today I have joining me Shelley Boland and Jill Duffy with Robin's Nest. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Paige.
Your service to the community is one that I am always overwhelmed at the things that you face. But I also feel the same way at the way you can reach out to families and impact lives. Tell us a little about Robin's Nest.
Okay, so we are part of a multidisciplinary team. So we work with a lot of other partner agencies like law enforcement, social services, the DA's office, the school system, and so forth, where we are working to provide hope and healing to children who have experienced maltreatment. Typically it's severe physical abuse or sexual abuse. We see on average about 225 children a year. And we receive these kids through either law enforcement or DSS. So there has to be an active investigation going on for us to see these kids.
Jill, you are a volunteer with Robin's.
I basically am, yes. I've been involved with Robin's Nest since 2010 when we first built the community collaboration to get it started. And, contacted key people who write grants really well, and so we were able to, we didn't have the building at first, but we were able to get an executive director in place, and then the building was donated, and it went from there. But I've probably been, at that point in time I wasn't on the board, I was just a community member. I've probably been serving on the board since, well, definitely since you've been there, since 2017. Yes, because I was designee for the school system, and then I think 2 years ago, I'm an at-large member.
When Dr. Phipps came on board.
So 2 years ago, I became a voting member, I guess. So currently I serve as the board chair. This will be my second year with that.
Tell us what brought you to Robin's Nest.
Well, I have a history of social work, and so I had worked as a protective services worker at DSS like eons ago in the 90s. And then I went into the school system where I continued to do school social work, and then later I was over the student services department. But through the course of time, though, I've worked with nonprofits as well, and I've been, a director for domestic violence prevention, and definitely child abuse and neglect, or the prevention thereof, has always been in my wheelhouse and something that's very important to me and very dear to me. And I am a native of Caldwell County, and so I've worked with the community in some fashion, the whole time in this arena. And now that I'm retired from the school system, I still want to give back and stay current with what's going on with our kids.
Shelley, you mentioned serving 220 plus children, families this year. How does that compare to what you served in previous years?
It's an increase. So when Robin's Nest first started, that first year I think it was, or the first and second years, it averaged about 180 or so. It quickly went up to about 200. And that's an average. So sometimes there was a bit more, sometimes a little less. Now we're seeing consistently an average of 225. So we have seen more. Part of that is because we've been doing a lot of work in the community to bring awareness. And so people feel more comfortable. They know how to report. They know why to report. Kids are now recognizing that the schools are a safe place to tell. And so that's part of it. It's not that the instances of it has gone up. It's that people are now more aware and they're reporting it more. However, keep in mind that it's still underreported. We have studies that show that the vast majority of adults never reported their abuse, so we know it's underreported. So if we're seeing about 225 kids a year, imagine how many kids are not being served. And that's a problem for our community, but not just ours. It's a problem everywhere.
How do people report child abuse?
So if there's an indication that a child has been abused, first of all, know that in North Carolina, we are all mandated reporters. So it is a misdemeanor if someone knows that a child is being maltreated and they don't report. But the way to report is you either call law enforcement or the Department of Social Services, and they will ask you. Now, law enforcement will take a report. DSS will ask you a series of questions to determine what the next step should be. Also, the difference between DSS and law enforcement is with Social Services, you are kept anonymous. The reporter is kept anonymous.
So Social Services there's more questions, but it's anonymous, so maybe you're protected a little bit.
The report, they can't disclose who the reporter is. Even if you give them your name, they can't disclose it. But the main difference there is that when Social Services gets involved in an investigation, it's because a caregiver or caretaker has been named, and law enforcement is going to be more involved if a caretaker or caregiver is not the person alleged to have perpetrated on a child.
And typically, law enforcement is involved in all of our cases because it's two different matters. One is a civil matter and one is a criminal matter. So they tend to be involved in all of them. But she's exactly right. If there's not a caretaker, and that can be, they stay with their grandparents all week long, and the grandparent is the one involved, say. But if it's a caretaker issue, then it's DSS.
When DSS or law enforcement gets a case, how does it come to you?
They submit a referral to us. We have a system that all of our investigators use. So they just go into the system and submit a referral, giving us the information, whatever information that we need in order to open the case. From that point, our advocate contacts the family, gets a little bit of information from them, and sets up an appointment for them to come into the office. The advocate is doing all types of advocacy pieces with that family, doing a safety assessment, seeing what needs that they have. That could be anything from housing, food, whatever they need in that situation. While that's going on, a forensic interviewer has taken the child into a room and speaks to them. It's a very specific conversation that they have. It's done by a trained interviewer, so it's non-leading, it's non-threatening. The environment is very child-friendly, so you're basically just having a conversation with the child to allow them to tell their story or not tell their story, whatever they feel comfortable with. But it's an evidence-based protocol that we must follow that's legally sound as well as emotionally fine. When they get done with that, they go into the medical room. They have a child medical evaluation by a specially trained medical provider. In fact, our medical provider is the only one in Caldwell County who's trained to do these specific medicals. And so she's rostered through the Child Medical Evaluation Program in Chapel Hill. And she receives supervision for that. They do case reviews and so forth. After that, they start the process of getting an assessment for therapy. So we're really fortunate in that we have some of the only trained in Caldwell County trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapists. That is the gold standard in therapy treatment for kids with trauma. We have a couple other treatment modalities that we use if they don't rate high enough on the scale for trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. But our main focus is on the child's hope and healing. We always say we can't guarantee justice in the criminal system, but we can certainly work really hard to make sure that these kids receive the hope and healing that they deserve, and that's what we want to focus on.
And if I remember correctly, you don't just initial interview, you're with that child throughout the entire process.
Absolutely. From the time that we receive that referral and meet that family, we're with them through the life of the case. And that can be 2 or 3 years with the judicial system. So we are with them the whole step of the way, and then we do court advocacy with them as well. Sometimes that child needs a lot of support in the courtroom, and so we'll stop what we're doing and we will all go there to be there for that child. But some of the other things that we do, we have provided them with clothing Well, a child doesn't necessarily have a suit to wear or a nice dress to wear to court, so we've provided them with clothing. We also provide. We had a family that the mother had nowhere to go, and with our resources and our community support, we were able to get her.
We furnished her house, didn't we?
We furnished. People showed up. People care. In Caldwell County, people care, and we put it out there. And she had washer, dryer, couch. The whole nine.
She got some new furniture from one of the supporters. Yes,
because she was in a safe situation one day and wakes up the next day and she's not in a safe situation, and she took her kids because that was what was important. She took her kids and did the right thing, but then she had nothing. And we're here to make sure that not just the child, but the family unit is provided for and helped. And the only way that we can do that is through our community, because we don't charge anyone for these services. We have no recurring funding streams, so we rely on grants and we rely on the community. That's important.
Jill, how are volunteers involved?
Well, I serve on the board, and so all of our board members are technically volunteers, and there's 19 of us? 21?
21.
We have had as many as 21.
It's 20 now, I think.
19, 20-ish. But so we meet monthly, and Shelley does an excellent job of directing, and she'll report to us anything that we need to know. But our big role really is to help sustain and help with the fundraising and coordinating fundraising events in the community, because like Shelley said, we don't charge. It's a nonprofit, and there are grants that we are normally able to get, but it would not cover the entire operating expense if we did not have the support of the community, and if we weren't out there, trying to do a couple of fundraisers a year. So speaking of, we do have a fundraiser coming up.
We do have a fundraiser coming up, but before we talk about that, I want to talk about what are your needs? Like if somebody just wants to give maybe quarterly, how could they do that?
You mean like as far as?
What do you need? Do you need cash donations?
We always need cash donations, but Shelley was talking earlier about, we also, the agency provides snacks and refreshments while the family and the child is there. And so that has to be restocked. Paper products, they go through those, and some of those things, as I remember her saying, are not reimbursed through a grant. So those kinds of like just refreshments and paper products are helpful. And recently when I was up there, there's been a lot of clothing that's been donated. And so now that COVID may be settling down some, it's not really been feasible to have any volunteers come into the building. Right. I mean, our meetings have been remote for the most part. So I think that I was hearing that it would help to get those clothes into bins and on racks, and that's something that we needed, right?
Absolutely. So we have a board member who has taken it under her wing to help us with this. We have so many children and parents who don't have anything, and now we've received such a wonderful support from the community that we are going to be starting our Robin's Nest boutique. And it will be on site, and when a family comes in to receive services, we give them a little card to go down and shop at our boutique. It's only for those who have come through our center, but they can go in and pick out anything that they need. And there's everything from, we have crib bumpers and diapers, all the way up to adult clothes, because the entire family needs help. And they can just go through and pick out what they need. We have shoes and all kinds of other things. So, and jewelry and makeup. You just don't even think about the things that you need. People just donate clothes, but we've had a wonderful response from our community. Now we need some volunteers to help us put it all together. It's a little bit daunting when you go into our boutique room.
It's a lot.
And see, when we only have 2, maybe 3 hanging racks. We need quite a bit more, and we need people who can donate their time to hang up clothes, sort clothes, get things looking. We don't want it to look like.
Want it to look nice, like a boutique.
You want it to look nice, and it's easier to sort through clothes when they're hanging up.
Exactly, absolutely. And speaking of which, if there's anyone out there who can do the type of lettering and painting, we have a window, and we would love to have Robin's Nest Boutique painted on that. That's another way they could give to us.
And also, occasionally we need maintenance and yard and landscaping. So spring's coming.
Spring is
so,
coming.
So I would say
Absolutely.
call Robin's Nest. Shelley would probably be the person to know most about what they need. But yeah, there's always something that needs to be done, and maybe even some painting.
Oh, yes. The needs are many. All you have to do is ask, and I will direct you in where you need to go. But also, it's the monetary donations as well. I mean, that's just something that we won't. We have to be able to have that trained medical provider. That costs money for her training and her salary. Those type of things. It makes a big difference.
And how many employees do you have now, Shelley? I mean, it's grown quite a bit. We actually, have an annex now.
Yeah, I think it's 8 or 9. I have to actually think about this. So there's myself. I have an assistant that helps me with all the financial stuff. There's just so much that needs to be done. She's been a godsend. We have the therapy receptionist, and then we have 2 therapists who are on staff. And we work with West Caldwell Health Council to also try to get some additional therapy that way. And we do have our
through
therapy
like contracts.
annex. So we do have our therapy annex so that they have their own building to provide those services. Then in our office we have the advocate and an advocate assistant. You were talking about caseloads and stuff with the social services. Typically a social worker has 30 to 40 caseloads, something like they're supposed to. Sometimes they don't. They have more.
Sometimes it's more.
But we're talking if you have 225 kids a year and they're on our rolls for 2 to 3 years, that's a caseload that no one person could do. So she has an assistant to help with her. We have our community outreach, and I have to think about the name because it changes all the time.
Educator.
It's not educator. We can't use education. Community outreach. Community awareness. Community outreach and awareness. And she's also a trained forensic interviewer. I'm a trained forensic interviewer. So the 2 of us do interviews as well as a couple other people on the multidisciplinary team. And then we have our medical provider. So.
We visited you a couple of years ago, and security, keeping the building secure, there's no, people don't see each other. If a family
confidentiality
comes
is protected.
Your confidentiality is strongly protected. You don't necessarily have multiple families, if you can help it, in the building at the same time. Talk to me a little more about that.
Yeah, so that's actually why we ended up getting the therapy annex, because at one point we're having direct services going on and we have therapy going on with 2 therapists, and trying to keep people from seeing each other was a problem. So we purchased the CAR-T, it's always called the CAR-T building, which is diagonally across from us. And now our therapy is held over there. We have 2 waiting rooms so that you can have therapy going on and the families don't see each other. And then we have our main reception area, so if someone else comes in and the other one hasn't left yet, they don't see each other. It also has 2 entrances. There's 2 doors, so there's an entrance and an exit so that they don't pass each other coming and going. So that's an important aspect. And then by moving that out, we were able to make some changes at our main office. So now people who come in for direct services come in the back door and go up the stairs and have all of their, the forensic interview, the medical, the advocacy piece. If another family arrives before that one's done, we have a waiting room downstairs in the front, so the other family can go out and never see the next family coming in. And that's an extremely important part of maintaining that confidentiality. But at the same time, with security, our doors are always closed. You have to buzz to get in, both at our office and at the annex. And we have security cameras everywhere, all around the exterior of the buildings and in the interior. If there's ever a room where any adult and a child meet, there's a camera in that room. So all the therapy offices have cameras. They don't have sound because then that would be a violation. But they do. We have the ability to have to go back and look if there's any issues. We want to make sure that everyone feels safe and secure in our offices and around our offices. So we take that very seriously.
And with that said, if somebody wants to make a donation, it might be better to call ahead to say that you're coming.
Oh, yes, absolutely, to make sure that there's not, scheduled appointments and that it's a good time to come through. And then also, like on the website, there's a place where you can do your cash donations and another way that you can communicate as well. But yeah, we've expanded quite a bit with the adding of that new building.
Right.
And so our last project's going to be to try to put an elevator in at some point. So we can always use money.
Yes. So with the services that are upstairs, we don't have an elevator, so you have to go up the stairs, which means that we also have to have dual purpose rooms downstairs because we have to have the ability to do the forensic interview and the medical if a child can't go up the stairs. And so one of the therapy rooms converts to a medical room, and one of the offices converts to a forensic interview room. The forensic interview room is hooked up with the camera and the microphones and all of that, and can be viewed by the investigative team through closed circuit upstairs. So we have that ability. We would love to be able to have single-use rooms and not have to scramble. So, but elevators are quite expensive. So we're working on this.
I was not aware of how expensive they were, but that is a project for the future that hopefully won't take too much longer.
You also mentioned community awareness. How do people, civic clubs or church groups or any group that gathers, how can they have Robin's Nest visit them?
There's a couple ways. One, they can call our office, 828-754-6262. They can either ask for myself or for Angie Gregg. She's the community awareness specialist. What she does is she goes into the community and teaches Darkness to Light Stewards of Children, which is an evidence-based best practice prevention program. On top of that, we have our own Robins to the Rescue curriculum that we created to piggyback on that. And what the Stewards of Children does is it tells you what to look for with abuse, why is it important to be aware, and the effects that abuse has on these children from first-person accounts. We watch videos that detail the experiences that people have had and why it's so important to be there. We need to be the stewards for these children. They can't stand on their, they're just little. They can't stand on their own, and we as adults have that responsibility. But the Robins to the Rescue says, okay, now you know this. How do you work within Caldwell County? What steps do you need to take within Caldwell County? And then she also goes into the school systems and teaches a age-appropriate body safety curriculum, which is also an evidence-based best practice curriculum, so it's not a fly-by-night one. And that teaches kids how to say no, how to be an advocate for themselves, and why it's important to tell an adult, a trusted adult. A lot of these offenders will scare them into saying, if you tell anyone, I'll hurt you or I'll hurt your mom or whatever. And that no, you need to tell. It's important to tell. And a lot of times they take a lot of guilt on. So it talks about those type of things and how to advocate for yourself. So if we can reach the adults on one end and the kids on another end, that maybe we can fight upstream and prevent the maltreatment from happening in the first place.
Yeah, ultimately that would be our goal, is to prevent it. Yeah.
And again, if someone wants you to come and do a program, they just need to call Robin's Nest.
Yes, either call Robin's Nest or they can go on our website, robinsnestcac.org.
Okay, great. Jill, you volunteer. This is your baby. And what is your motivation?
Why is it important?
Why is it important to you? Personally, it could be professionally. I know you've seen a lot working in the schools and social service.
I saw a lot working in social services as well. I just feel like that every child deserves a good, healthy, safe upbringing. And I know that, and education included, that we need to be there for the kid from the beginning. I think it's good for our community. I think it saves our community money. It allows them to be, contributing citizens. But I also have seen a lot. I have seen what trauma can do to kids and families. I have seen how it impacts their ability to receive their education. And so for me, it's really about the prevention. I've done interventions, and that's very needed, and it's also very hard. And so hats off to all my social worker friends who are at DSS and in the other agencies, schools, where you are an integral piece of trying to protect the kids. But if we can prevent through the treatment that they're getting and through the awareness that we're trying to provide so that people know it's okay to report, still underreported, but the more that's reported, the earlier we can intervene. I mean, it's really about prevention. I just feel like that I would really love it if Caldwell County felt like a safe community for all. And we've even gotten some grants to do trauma-informed community work, and that's still ongoing with the Child Collaborative that meets monthly, and the different agencies come together. But there's been some grants provided to try to teach resiliency and speak the same language among DSS schools, mental health, juvenile justice, health department, medical offices, to try to bring it together and so that we're all like on the same page and we're all trying to work to help families learn and be healthier. The other piece of that is really supporting the parents, because they're doing the best they can, and sometimes they have had trauma, and so by supporting the whole family, I think that's where prevention is going to happen.
Ladies, thank you for joining me today and for sharing so much information about Robin's Nest. And thank you for watching Caldwell County Today.